Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel and our new series, the All Star Wrestling from the WWF. I believe began in 1975 and runs through 1985. And so we're going to see how many of these we can find. Still going to try and find more worldwide and other network stuff, but certainly going to have the largest review series we can. This one is the 25th of April, 1981. Pat Patterson and Vince McMahon with actual hair that doesn't look like a pompadour are your hosts for the program. Patterson, of course, one of Vince's biggest confidants, and that is a pretty big deal here. We see an unnamed opponent because George Steele runs in on the announcement by Gary Michael Capetta. Capetta has done an interview for this channel, and so if you're interested in checking that out, worth going out of your way to see. George the Animal Steele, though, is a heel at the time, comes in for the summer, so, and maybe, off weeks for maybe spring vacation or something, hangs the man upside down in the over-the-top rope and doesn't get all he wants on that. The enhancement talent hanging upside down, and Steele goes for the turnbuckle. Not just something that he did during the babyface run, like a lot of people think, but he did that all the way back to the early 80s, maybe even late 70s. Biting and clawing at his opponent, trying to send him over the top rope to the floor. Doesn't get all he wants on it, but you see George Steele managing to do everything he possibly can to manage to get a hard shot, and we see Steele send the man into the wood steps on the outside of the TV arena. Steele is a complete madman. Classy Freddie Blassie on the outside managing Steele. I did not know in my history that, in fact, someone other than Lou Albano had managed Steele, so that's news to me. But again, my knowledge of WWF probably began around 83-ish. So this stuff from 81, which actually is the year I was born, is new to me. Steele gets slipped a foreign object, which he then puts in his back pants. I won't even say pocket, the back of his pants. It's hanging out, and that's the idea. Steele manages to continue to claw and bite and try to hammerlock his way to a victory. Fred Blassie has to pull his man Steele off. Steele gets over as a major beast type, beast incarnate sort of creature, and not a good place to be there. We then go to the sweeping of the ring, enhancement talent. Mr. Jones, I believe, is his name, an African American fellow, against King Kong Mosca. Mosca, major guy at the time, lots of punches, lots of kicks, heavy, both looking, but also just pulls a guy into a front face lock that looks like he could crush a man with it if he wanted to. Heavy power, and a lot of people aren't a fan of Mosca, but having not seen a ton of him, I'm enjoying just the striking basic offense. Inverted forearms along the way after more use of the chin lock, headlock type stuff. Enhancement talent tries to come out from underneath, doesn't get all he wants on that. Mosca manages to punch him right between the eyes, doesn't get everything he wants out of that either, but again, what you do see is a lot of aggression from Mosca. King Kong Mosca manages to be in control for the next several minutes. Enhancement talent does fire back with a few punches here and there, but never gets any real offense in terms of longevity. And then we see some choking out over the top rope and slinging the man back. These rings are harder than the rings in the early 80s, or the mid 80s, or at least as hard. The ropes sag a bit, though. A hard shot into the corner with a shoulder tackle by Mosca. Mosca manages to remain in control quite a bit there, and again nails the run of it all. Hit hard shots, and then we see some big runs there. Hard shots by Mosca. Mosca manages to do everything he possibly can. Big backbreaker, and holds the man in the air for the backbreaker. Doesn't get all he wants. Actually places him on the knee pretty convincingly. He actually tries to get a submission out of the backbreaker, which is rare at the time. Mosca basically says that Backlund is ducking him in a post-match promo. Also, they do a whole stretcher job for the enhancement talent here. Uh, Mosca basically says he wants the championship. He wants Backlund. He wants a challenge. He doesn't want to be backward stepping. I love the fact that and Lou Albano is his manager. Albano only here for the enhanced or the interview part. Doesn't do a lot of talking. Mosca actually has a 4 or 5 minute interview where he talks about wanting to get rid of Bob Backlund, but also wants to be one of the most devastating individuals of the time. Albano half looks in the bag. Mosca is willing to knock people out, fight, and do whatever he needs to do. Doesn't seem to care about anybody's previous experiences or the like. Enhancement match up next. Mil Mascaris, the man of 1,000 masks from Mexico, who I did not realize had such a prominence in the WWF in 1981. I knew he had been in the States, but primarily thought he had stayed in Southeast regions. Mosca takes, Mascaris rather, takes the enhancement talent over and tries to wrestle him to the mat. Some basic kind of flip throughs and basic monkey flip style maneuvers using lucha style all the way back here in 1981. So people that think the lucha style just kind of came around in the 90s is not true. Lucha's been around for close to, well, probably 100 years in Mexico, but popularized here late 60s, early 70s, except in the southeastern area. Attempted surfboard, but Mascaris doesn't get it. Mascaris then does a kind of step over into an armbar, into a submission hold. Interesting combination where a guy like Mascaris, being the high flyer and one of the few people to do masks, obviously Mascaris couldn't wrestle at the Garden because of the mask, at least to my knowledge. Masks were banned for several years in Madison Square Garden, going back to the 1950s, I do believe, the original Garden. Anyway, Mascaris manages to hang on. Match runs a little longer than your average enhancement match, but they're trying to fill time. 47-minute runtime on this particular program, and you can see that they're trying to fill time here. Mascaris obviously doesn't do any sort of losing in the scenario. Crossbody from the top rope, which in that ring had to hurt a lot, gives Mascaris the victory here. Then we go to another enhancement style match, 6-man tag team match. Baron Mikel Secluda, Chris I want to say Canyon. I know that's not right. Might have actually been Chris Canyon, but not the original one. AKA the man who later becomes King Kong Bundy and the third man in. The former tag team champions Tony Garea and Rick Martel and SD Jones are the three men on the other side of the team. Jones had been a perennial enhancement talent through the late 80s, but here still a major draw, as he was a draw in the Boston Garden, the Philly Spectrum, and Madison Square Garden throughout the 70s and early 80s, and Martel and Garea tag team champions. Many people don't realize that Rick Martel had a history all the way back to the late 70s in the WWF, and so that's interesting. A lot of people only familiar with his Strikeforce run or later stuff. Anyway, Martel, who looks like $1 million, this is years before he goes to the AWA and becomes their heavyweight champion of the world, is dominant during the early stages of the match. Leon and his adversaries get Martel into the corner, keep him there for several minutes. Tony Garea comes in to save his multi-time tag team partner. Garea, also a multi-time tag team champion, going back through the 70s and early part of the 80s. Actually, it's really interesting for me to see this type of stuff because a lot of people say this wrestling was boring at the time. I do not see that. In comparison, I get bored much more with the flippity-flops of today versus the actual matches that require selling and artwork of yesterday. Obviously, they look like more fights here. Cut off of Tony Garea in the midpoint of the match, going forward here. And Garea gets cut off in the heel corner, gets shot under the chin, shot in the throat, and all points in between. Jones is able to come back in and hooks up I guess you'd say a leg cravat or some sort of attempted semi-spinning toe hold might be the right terminology. Anyway, full body scissors by SD Jones, doesn't get what he wants on that. Working the body scissors back to his own corner doesn't lead him where he wants to go either. So that is, uncomfortable to say the very least. Baron Cicluna sends SD Jones into the buckle, and obviously Jones does the I'm hard-headed, I'm African American, or in this case of the Antilles spot that wouldn't play today for racial reasons. Anyway, Bundy comes in his enhancement name. Odd to me, the guy 300 plus pounds is using an enhancement role and wearing purple tights, but this is King Kong Bundy with hair under his again under the Chris Kanyon name. He gets a few short knees in on Tony Garea, Irish whips along the way, and doesn't get all he wants, but a big tackle in the corner. Of course, Bundy later in '81, actually a matter of months, goes down to Texas, Dallas Sportatorium, and does quite well for himself down that way. Tag off by the baby faces, and Kanyon gets taken down several more times there. Tag off to another one of the enhancement talents, whose name I do not recall, and they kind of double work the arms, double arm ringers, and actually make arm ringers look like painful maneuvers. Cut off there, and it doesn't go quite according to plan. Snap over by Tony Garea. Garea not taking a backward step here. Attempted roll through, doesn't get all he wants, but gets enough, and ultimately kind of the tag off. And so it's a drop kick under the chin. Again, doesn't get all he wants there, but gets enough. And, the short knee into the midsection leads things in a positive direction there. We then see a sunset flip and from the top rope by Tony Garea, leading to a victory for his team. I believe that's the second to last match because they've got about 6 or 7 minutes left on the program here. Usually there's one final enhancement talent deal, and this time Don the Rock Muraco in an enhancement talent match here. Muraco still going to be Intercontinental Champion throughout the 80s here, but has not obtained that yet. Managed by the Grand Wizard, and Muraco gets some takedowns and basic stuff here. Lets the enhancement talent get back up. The takedown was rather awkward. Muraco still looks like $1 million, not bloated like he was years later on the steroids. Looks really good. Still has a good run left in him. He doesn't really bloat up till about 84, 85. But anyway, Muraco manages a couple of elbows in the corner, manages to get some offense, big body slam and shoulder breaker by him, and then he actually drives the man with the first tombstone pile driver. Weakest looking tombstone ever at this point, though, by Muraco. Does not pin the man after the tombstone, instead picks him up for a vertical suplex instead, floats over with the vertical, and then goes, amazingly, to the top rope, which is a weird place for Don Muraco to be in comparison to what he would become, but manages to fly high and get a splash from the top. 1, 2, 3. That is our victory, and that is the close for the day. We'll be back with more right after this.